I'm Stuart White. I'm the Director of the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney. And I've been working on what we call integrated supply-demand planning for a number of years. And some of my first work was working for the Water Corporation of Western Australia to develop the Kalgoorlie-Boulder Water Efficiency Program. Also worked in the late 1990s on the Rouse Regional Demand Management Strategy, in which case we were looking at opportunities to improve the efficiency with which water is used as an alternative to increasing supply, because saving a kilolitre of water per year is the same as supplying a kilolitre of water per year. So we're using that principle to work out what's the lowest cost way of meeting the water demand in a particular region. One of the figures that's been bandied about for some time is the date 2024, which is a suggestion that in the Rouse region, supplied currently mostly by Rocket Creek Dam, but also some groundwater sources, that it's the point at which the demand would increase and the supply would decrease because of climate change and other things, so that the region would suddenly have a water scarcity. And of course, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't mean that in 2024 something magical happens and two lines cross over and we run out of water. What actually happens is that there's a slow increase in demand year on year, or there is suggested to be. In fact, there's probably not likely to be. And there's a yield, a secure yield from the system, and these two lines cross over. What in fact happens is that the secure yield of a water supply system is determined by a whole range of different factors. One of the most important factors is the assumptions that are made about restrictions and the restriction rules that apply. That is, how often restrictions can be imposed and how deep those restrictions are in terms of the requirements upon people. So those two things, the frequency and depth of restrictions, determine the water security of a system. And what has happened is that those rules have been changed without consulting the local community, such that it reduces the secure yield of the water supply system by hundreds of megalitres of water per year. So in other words, that date of 2024 is mostly influenced by a change in restriction rules which has been made without recourse or questioning or engagement with the community. And I think this is something that it's often quite difficult to understand, because we hear this date of 2024, but it's something that we also need to talk about and to make sure that people have a say in what the restriction rules should be, because oftentimes people are quite supportive of water restrictions when they know that they can save a lot of money, they can save a lot of destruction of the area by the building of a new dam or by greater extraction of groundwater. If they say we are going to have more relaxed restriction rules, so we're not going to introduce restrictions that are either as frequent or as deep, then that means that you can get less water out of your water supply system each year, because you're not imposing these restrictions. Now, the Rouse Water would claim that that's a state government requirement. It's a state government guideline, to be sure, but it's something that is actually allowed to be changed by the local community, and it should be the subject of some sort of community engagement to say what people prefer. It's a willingness to accept argument, and essentially becomes a willingness to pay argument with the imposition of the cost of a dam.
So if we were able to agree to go on to level 1 water restrictions, then the water would last longer.
Yeah, that's right. The dam levels would drop less quickly because we were prepared to impose restrictions, whether they be level 1, 2 or 3. Yeah. If we were prepared to impose them more frequently and to allow them to go deeper, then you would actually extend the time at which the dam level drops during a drought. Now, there is an argument that's been made that you get what's called demand hardening. The more efficient people are with water, because it's either priced appropriately or because of education campaigns or general awareness, then you find that the amount of water that can be saved, in other words, the cream on the top of the cake is lower, So you get demand hardening and you're not able to save as much during restrictions. So that has already been taken into account and should be taken into account in those calculations. But it doesn't mean that there aren't savings that can be made during restrictions. And generally, when we've done surveys of this, including in Sydney and the Central Coast during the most severe drought on record, during level 4 restrictions in the Central Coast, we find that there's strong community support for restrictions even during those times. So it's something that the community should be asked about. If the community say, no, we're very happy to have restrictions, and we're very happy to have them as frequently and as deep as they were before, then that should be accepted. And if the reverse is true, then that should also be taken into account.